Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. This is episode number 35, and we have the amazing Mandy Bujold, Canadian Olympic boxer. We're going to go through all of her amazing accomplishments, but let me tell you, lots of medals, Olympian, the whole bit, and one heck of a competitor. So this is part one of two. We had such a great conversation. It just went quite longer than we expected, so broke her into two parts. So some of the things we talk about, and when I first started the Green Effect podcast, I didn't want to talk about, mortgages and banking exclusively, obviously. But I want to bring on sort of different guests, athletes, business owners, all sorts of different types of people. So, with Mandy as a great example, we're going to talk about her path in Rio in 2016. She had a bit of a food poisoning issue, but she had to fight through it. We're going to talk about that. What's a day in the life of an Olympian? It's expected she's going to qualify for Tokyo. How does she balance family and everything else in her life? Not an easy feat, that's for sure. Her growing up, why boxing? She grew up in Coalberg. There's a lot of volleyball going on in there. Why didn't she do that instead? And her motivation, we talk a lot about focusing on process, not results. What's up with today's youth? She's involved with a lot of youth organizations. What's up with today's youth? How does she see it as an Olympian? And finally, the current state of amateur athletics in Canada. We talk about centralized training centers, current state, where things are, funding, lots of great topics like that. So, lots of great things to go through, and here we go with Mandy.
Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. Finance, life, business, and everything in between. And now, your host, Stephen Green.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We've got Mandy Bujold, who is a Canadian Olympic boxer. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I know you have a really busy training schedule, so I'm glad you were able to make this. So I'm going to read down some of your amazing accomplishments, and I want you to jump in if I've missed absolutely anything, okay? So I've got you here as an 11-time, and you correct me, I had 9, but definitely 11, 11-time national champion. 2016 Olympian, so you got 5th in Rio, and we're going to talk about, apparently you had a bit of a sickness, maybe some food, we're going to talk about that one, and 2-time Pan Am gold medalist, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Awesome, that's an awesome resume, awesome resume. So let's first start out, give us your 1-minute elevator speech, all about you. 1 minute, go.
All right. Well, I am a new mom to a little girl, Kate Olympia, which is short for KO, which kind of goes with the boxing theme.
Love it.
Yeah. Outside of boxing, I run a charity event called Champions for Charity. Last year was my first year running it, and it's a fundraiser for McMaster Children's Hospital and Jaravinsky Hospital and Cancer Center. That was a pretty proud moment. We raised over $160,000 in our first year, which I was pretty proud of. Outside of boxing as well, I do some high performance mentorship camps for youth, which I really enjoy, trying to teach youth different aspects other than just kind of the training piece, how to brand yourself, how to market yourself, the importance of sports psychology and all the other pieces that go along with training. I'm a part of the RBC Olympians program as well. I do some public speaking. So that's kind of some of the things I do, I guess, outside of my regular training and boxing.
That's awesome. Wow, that's fantastic. It's nice that you can use your incredible accomplishments to help others. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. I think like coming from a community like Kitchener-Waterloo, such a supportive community. People really just kind of rally behind different initiatives, and I think I've been very fortunate. Anything that I've done in this region, I've had incredible support. So I've continued to kind of go back and try to give back to the community in different ways. And I am the type of person, I've always got new ideas ideas and new things that I want to try and do. There's not enough hours in the day for all the things I would like
No
to be
kidding.
doing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you have a 15-month-old.
I do,
So you have
yeah.
less hours in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. Trying to manage that is a whole other puzzle, I think.
Yeah. Oh, no kid. And sorry, daughter, right?
Daughter, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I have a daughter too, and believe me, it gets more interesting, let me tell
Yeah.
you.
I've heard.
Yeah. Now, and you were telling me earlier that you dropped her off for the first time today.
Well, she's been coming to the gym. So at Movati, they have like a kind of little play area where the kids can stay. So she's been coming with me for a while, but today was the first time she didn't want me to leave. So that was a whole new experience, right? So usually she just kind of goes to whoever and, oh, there's a toy, there's a ball, and she'll kind of go for it, right? But today it was kind of like, no, she did not want me to leave. So that was a whole new experience.
Oh, and see, so when they get older, it goes the other way around.
Yeah.
They're like, get lost.
Yeah.
Drop me off
I
and
know.
go.
So I'll enjoy it while it lasts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Total different set of issues.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have to ask the question because I did read about it on the website. So what happened in Rio? You got sick?
I did, yeah. So, I mean, I'm still kind of trying to figure out exactly what happened. Still don't know if it was something I ate, more of like a tourist virus is what they were calling it. But yeah, basically I had started my competition. I had my first fight. I had 4 days off in between competitions. So, I was staying fit, staying active, making sure my weight was good. And then the night before, I had my quarterfinal match, I guess. I ended up just not feeling good, and this was about like 10 o'clock at night, and I was going to be fighting in the morning. And, I started to feel upset stomach, and I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe, I'm at the Olympics. Maybe it's just nerves. And then I got up and I got sick, and I thought, okay, well, I got that out of my system. And I'm sitting there trying to convince myself, right? Like, this is not a big deal. Then I got up again, I got sick, and I'm like, all right, so this is like, it's done now. Like, it's out of my system. I'm good. I'm going back to bed. I'm fighting in the morning. I've got this.
Yeah.
And then the third time when I got up, I was like, oh my God, I'm sick. So that's when I remembered that, like, my coach had said, like, there was doctors on call. We can kind of like figure it out. So I called my coach, and, we tried to figure out what we could do. And there was obviously a lot of things they couldn't give me because a lot of like stomach medication will make you drowsy. And I was supposed to be fighting in a few hours. And
and a bunch of it's probably on the ban list too, I'm guessing.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, for sure. And no one really wants to make that call of saying, hey, well, you're too sick, you're too weak to be able to compete. So they basically were trying to do whatever they could to make me feel the best I could. There's a hospital there. They took me to the hospital. They gave me an IV. So I was basically, I think it was 6 or 7 in the morning. I had this IV because I had lost like 5 pounds of fluids on top of making weight overnight. So just trying to kind of replenish some energy. But yeah, about 9:50, I basically pulled the IV out, and I headed over to the venue, which luckily was just kind of across from where the athletes' village was. And, at that point, I still had no idea if I was actually going to step into the ring because I just didn't know if I was even going to be able to have the energy to do that. So I kind of got ready. I went through everything that I normally do. I tried to warm up, couldn't really warm up. So I honestly focused on being like more mentally prepared. And I just thought, you know what? I know what I'm supposed to be thinking right now. I know what I'm supposed to be feeling. So I tried to like bring up those emotions and those thoughts. And yeah, just one moment at a time. And I knew that if I didn't step into that ring, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. I had worked towards that goal forever. So I thought, you know what, even if I go in there and I have to stop between rounds or, I've given it all I can, then I'll do that. But I knew I had to at least step in there. And it did go the distance. But I mean, I was fighting a 3-time world champion and an Olympic silver medalist. So I gave her a good fight. But, my reaction wasn't quite there. I could see everything she was doing, but it was kind of like a delayed reaction, which happens naturally when you're not feeling 100%. So it was frustrating. I mean, just to have that all happen at that moment. It's still something I think about all the time, and something it's taken me a while to really kind of, actually be able to talk about. But it's, I mean, it is what it is. And now it's just part of that journey and part of, I think, what's motivating me to move forward for this next Olympics coming up this summer.
Awesome. I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
Couldn't imagine. All this work towards that, and then you eat something you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And you didn't know, but
Yeah.
it's something that just reacted wrong.
And I think as athletes, I mean, as you would know, like you go through every situation in your mind of, okay, well, what if I, hurt my ankle, or what if I dislocated my shoulder? Like I literally went through every situation. I thought in my head that I thought, if this happens, what would I do? How would I react? What would, and then this was one of those things that like is so out of your control that, you talk about like control the controllable. This was something that I couldn't control. So it was, I just had to kind of go with it. And I think for me, the only thing I really had control over in that situation was my attitude, right? How was I going to approach the situation? And, I tried to stay positive throughout the whole thing. And I tried to, not dwell on the fact that I was feeling that way, but try to think about, okay, well, I need to kind of keep my energy. Like I could have been really pissed and, got angry and just kind of gave up, but I was like kind of channeling that energy for when I was going to need it in the ring. So
yeah, and I think that's tough. If you get yourself in the right mindset, right, then hopefully you can overcome it. I'm trying not to throw up, but at the same breath, I need to fight 3-time world champion.
Yeah.
So, oh man, but hey, you know what? If you can take something away from that and build on it, more power to you. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us more about your journey in sport. So, what did your typical day look like as a boxer getting ready to go to the Olympics?
So I train twice a day, 6 days a week. So usually try to keep Sundays as kind of a rest day, family day. So my first workout is either, cardio, so running, sprints, that type of thing, or a strength workout. So it kind of alternates depending on the day. And then my second workout is always a boxing specific workout. So that would be kind of like shadow boxing, bag work, pad work with my coach. Sometimes we are doing sparring, usually about twice a week. So yeah, everything that's kind of very sport specific.
How many hours a day?
It ends up being about 4.5, 5 hours.
Do you need rest in between? And, and your daughter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, there's a little less recovery in between than I used to have. I used to, be able to kind of in between workouts. I actually used to do a lot of days 3 times a day because I had the energy to. But now I'm chasing a toddler around, so I don't really feel like I need that extra session because I'm getting it just by chasing
a
her.
kid around.
But yeah, so there's a little less recovery in between. It's just part of the game now. Being a new mom, and I try my best to time like when she takes a nap for me to be able to lay down for a little bit and recover, because I mean sleep is the best recovery, but she does sleep really good at night, so I definitely get lots of sleep at night, which is nice.
That's good. Now, okay, so obviously you've got the time during the day in between your workouts for your daughter. How do you balance family life? So people will know that I coach competitive volleyball, and I sometimes find myself making deals with my wife to be able to do things, right? And that's fair because you know what? It is time away from my family. But how do you balance, daughter and husband and family, and, family day is Sunday for you, for example. How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm very lucky that my husband's very, very supportive. And also like has a really good work schedule. So he works for the Kitchener Fire Department, and they work 24-hour shifts.
Awesome.
So they end up working 8 days a month. So it's great. So it gives me a lot of time. Like he's off a lot during the week, so he helps with my daughter. My mom and dad are both retired as well. They live about 5 minutes away, and they love being grandparents.
Oh, that's great.
So my mom often will come over. I have a few other friends too that I can easily that I'll call sometimes when I need just someone, if my mom needs a break or something and I just need someone to come for 2 hours so I can get my work in. So honestly, I have a really, really great support system. And I know that, and Kate likes it too, right? Like she's not only with me at home and with Reed at home, like she gets to spend time with her grandma, and she gets to spend time with, this other lady, Sophie, that comes over, a good friend of mine. So I think it's good for her. It kind of changes her environment a little bit as well. So being creative, spending time with Reed obviously becomes a little harder because we try to manage, everything with Kate now and the training. So I think that's why Sundays are really important for us to kind of keep to ourselves and just, even if it's just at home as a family, we just kind of try to really have that time alone.
Yeah, and you know, it is tough with the way things are. And listen, so mine are, again, 17 and 19 this year. I may say 16 and 18, but they're turning 17 and 19 because I'm just trying to get them off I say get them off my payroll, get them out of the house. But yeah, it gets tougher because, then they start to get cell phones and they get their friends at school and, and then you're traveling. Like it gets to be a lot. Now, having said that, I've also told my daughter, I said, I know you're 16 turning 17, but whenever you can have grandkids after you're done school and job and married, I'll help you out. It's all good. Yeah. So we're now getting to that now.
Yeah, no, it's super helpful to have that kind of support. Like it, I don't think I'd be able to do it if Reed worked a regular job, 9 to 5 every day, it would probably be too much. Like we could put her in daycare or something like that, but I don't know. I find right now it's just perfect. We have a really good balance, and I can get the training in. Reed gets his training in. Yep. So it's good.
That's very good. Now, you were born in Cobourg, Ontario, and for people who don't know, Cobourg has beautiful Victoria Beach there. Volleyball courts as far as you can see, beautiful. How did you end up in boxing and not on a volleyball court? Explain that one to me.
My height might be part of that.
Look at me, I'm in volleyball, and I think I'm just a little bit taller than you.
Yeah. I did play volleyball when I was younger in high school. I actually enjoyed volleyball and badminton were kind of the sports that I did a little bit in school.
So 2 sports where there's no body contact you enjoyed, and now you're a boxer.
Well, I actually never really did anything that was contact related when I was younger. So I was born in Cobourg, lived in Port Hope, and then my family actually moved to Moncton, New Brunswick. That's where I did most of my schooling. So in grade 10, then I moved to Kitchener. So we kind of moved around a little bit. My dad was in the construction field, so we kind of had to go where the work was. But yeah, even when I was younger, my parents would put me in things like baton twirling and, artistic gymnastics and I hated it because I was not flexible. I wasn't very good at it. So I just assumed really early in life that I was not an athlete. Like I knew there was people out there, they're athletic, and I thought it was really cool, but I just wrote off right away. Like I'm not good at sports. And even in high school, I went to Forest Heights, and Forest Heights at the time, you could take gym class or you could take dance class. And I took dance class over gym class, which people always think is funny, but I'm just I was horrible at any sport. I would be competitive because I wanted to, but it wasn't I would end up getting hurt more than anything.
So why boxing? How did you end up doing this?
Well, so it wasn't until my brother joined a boxing club, and I remember seeing him. He's a year older than me, and I remember him kind of coming home all excited about what he was learning, and he was kind of getting in shape, and I thought, oh, that looks fun. And to me, I didn't look at boxing as like a sport or like a game that you played. To me, it was like a skill. Oh, that's kind of cool. You learn how to defend yourself. You learn how to throw proper punches. Little did I know how hard and how demanding it was physically. I just thought, oh, kind of that looked like a fun thing to learn. So that's what I think attracted me to the sport. And my brother did not want me to go to the gym when he was there. It wasn't cool, of course, to bring your little sister to the boxing club. So I waited until he quit boxing. And when he quit, I asked a friend at my school, actually, I was like, do you want to come to the gym with me? Let's see what this is all about. And I think I just needed someone to walk up there with me because I knew it was going to be a male's world in that gym. And it really was back then. So, I think once I kind of got the courage to just go there, I was hooked and, started learning the sport. I remember even just not being able to do the warm-up. The warm-up, we would just run around the ring and do different exercises, and it was pretty intense. And I remember having to stop and pretend to tie my shoelaces a couple times. But it took me a while to actually get in shape because I had never really done anything like that before. So no, I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that it was challenging. And then I just eventually had the right coaches that took their time and really taught me in a way that was good for me to learn. And then, I just never looked back.
So let's just say it's you versus your brother in the ring. Who do I put my money on?
Yeah. Well, now you would put your money on me.
That a girl. Love it. Love it. That a
He
girl.
knows it too. He wouldn't do that.
Okay. Trash talk. I love it. I love it. Okay, so you're an Olympian. You went to Rio. You got sick, the whole bit. And how do you stay motivated? Because I'm pretty sure, there might be nights when your daughter's up late. You do not feel like getting out of bed. I'm sure you have setbacks, right? Injury here and there, or bad days. How do you stay motivated to do this? Like what's your driving force? How do you stay motivated? Tell me about that.
I think for me, setting goals, right? Like always having a goal to work towards is the biggest motivator for me. Like I know when I set something, when I put my mind to something, I just do whatever it takes to get there. And I'm like that in a lot of aspects of my life. So I think for me, setting that Olympic goal and then, working back on, okay, what's the process to get there? Focusing on the process and not necessarily the outcome, but just like, okay, if I do this today and this tomorrow and this the next day, that's going to lead me to where I want to go. So I plan everything in my life. I write everything down. I'm very much like an organized person, and I like to just have structure, and I like to be able to kind of see progress. And I think boxing brings that for me, and it does that, and it's a very structured thing, and you have to put the work in to get the results. It's not something that you can just walk into and have a little bit of talent and succeed. You have an opponent that you're going to be facing in the ring, and if you're not out there training, or if you're not running in the mornings, or if you're not doing those things, your opponent is, and it'll show in the ring. So it really just keeps you accountable to what it is that you need to do.
Yeah. And I think so for years in volleyball, and I actually heard you talked about process, and I believe I heard it through when I was doing my certification with USA Volleyball. Their whole team is based on focus on process, not results. And I've always brought that to my teams. Now, you work with youth now, and I know you're 32, I believe it is.
Yep.
So you're right. You're not a millennial. You're probably the last group of that generation that gets that. Do you find, because I find this, do you find that youth struggle with that because they're just so looking for the quick, I just want to win today?
Yeah. I think that's a part of reality now, right? Like everything is so fast. Like think about technology and like the way things are changing. They're definitely used to getting things when they want it, and right away, right? Like nowadays, imagine like having to wait in line for something, or having to, like you can pre-order your coffee. Like you don't even have to wait for your coffee anymore. You just show up and it's there. Like I think it's tough. I mean, there's so many things I think in society that right now that I don't agree with. And I think, there's a lot of lessons that you learn from, even losing sometimes. Like it's okay to lose, because that's where you're going to learn more, right? I don't know. There's a lot of things right now that I think it's tough, and it's something I think about now, knowing that I'm going to have to raise my daughter in this, and as it's changing more and more, it's scary to think, how am I going to try to make sure she has like these good principles and this work ethic and all of these things when everything's just going to be so simple. Like she can already grab my phone and basically navigate it, and she's 15 months.
Eh?
Like
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, it is a different world, and I think we just have to kind of, I think we have to figure out new ways to be able to motivate and reach that audience, or that younger audience, because it's different, right? I think we just have to be a bit more creative on how we do that.
Yeah, amen to that. Everything you just said there. It is a different group, and hey, listen, positives and negatives, right? Like I mean, there's
for sure.
Kids are bigger, stronger. I think arguably they process information much faster, right? But it's different ways of doing it, right? And it's figuring out learning styles and stuff like that. So yeah, totally get it for sure. Okay, so let's talk about the current state of amateur athletics in Canada on that note. So right now, and I was reading up a little bit on this, so your training center is in Montreal, okay? And there was an article about yourself making a family decision to forego funding and carding and stuff like that to stay here in Kitchener with your family and your daughter and your husband and your parents and everybody. Talk to me about where things are going, how you see it for amateur athletics in Canada relative to funding, facilities, training. Talk to me a little about that and your decision to stay here.
Yeah. I mean, my decision to stay in Kitchener was kind of a no-brainer for me. If I would have had to make that decision, let's say early on in my career, it might have been different, right? I might have taken the opportunity. I mean, I, was still trying to find kind of the right coaching and all of that. But I think now, like, I'm a mature enough athlete that I know what I need and I know what it takes to get there. So I know how to surround myself with a good team, and I think I have that good team right now. Having that support system is very important. So for me, I mean, I knew this is exactly where I need to be to get to where I want to go. But it is interesting how a lot of sports, I think, are going more towards a centralized system. And I know for boxing anyway, in Canada, we actually had someone from Ireland who came in and evaluated our program and looked at what we were doing and made suggestions. And one of the suggestions that they made was this centralized system. So for me, I'm not 100% sure that I agree with it. I think there's a lot of great things that can come from a centralized system. But I think it's very different in a small European country than it is in Canada because of the size of our country and where the athletes are coming from. Because I know in Ireland or these other countries, they will go and they'll train Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday, and then they can drive home. It's a 2-hour drive or a 3-hour drive. They can go home on the weekends. They can relax. They can get away from the team, have some downtime, come back re-energized to train again. For us, I mean, there's a training center in Montreal. I can't come home every weekend. There's athletes in Vancouver. They can't go home, right? Like they're stuck in this environment. So they're almost getting like overworked and fatigued because they don't really have that time to recover and just kind of like take a step back away from it. But that being said, like I do think for some athletes, again, like there's some athletes out east that, have really good potential, really good boxers, but maybe they don't have the facilities or the training partners that they need to be able to get to that next level. So for them, like a national sport organization like this where they're centralized is great because they're now getting the great sparring. They now have like, sports science around them. They can kind of really understand what it takes to get to that next level. So I'm kind of in the middle between, how I really feel about it because it's great for some athletes, but I don't think it needs to be something that's mandatory for all athletes. And even when I speak to Boxing Canada, my sport organization, they know and they trust 100% what I'm doing. And they know, they know my strength coach, they know my sports psychologist, they know my massage therapist. All the people that I work with are professionals and they're at the top of their fields respectively. And so whenever they have these mandatory training camps, they'll always tell me unfortunately, you're going to have to come because we know you're doing the right things, but there's some athletes that, maybe aren't doing that same type of training or not surrounding themselves properly. So, all the athletes kind of have to suffer from that. And we all kind of have to be put into this pool. And I feel like when you go there, like we were just there for a few weeks, the training's good, everything's good, but it's not individualized. You're now training with this big group, and in an individual sport, you need to be able to, work with a coach and work on certain things that you need to do in the ring. So what I need to do is completely different than what our heavyweight male needs to do. It's just a very different, they're going to be facing very different opponents. It's just a totally different pace that you're fighting at. Like the techniques and tactics are very different. But then when we're there as a group, because it's such a big group and such like a small number of coaches, you're kind of just doing generic work to stay fit, and as opposed to actually being able to take you to the next level. So those are the things I think that kind of make me shy away from it at the level that I'm at, and knowing what I need to be prepared and to step into the ring. So I don't know, there's good and there's bad. It really just depends on the athlete and what their current situation is.
Yeah, and the centralized training thing that's come up in volleyball as well. And listen, this country's humongous geographically, right?
Yeah.
are especially with athletes these days, I can't imagine a parent sending their kid away without the parent moving with them. Like, I mean, it's just, I can't see it happening. And if you can get, not to go too far down the wrong road here, but if you can get the same training without the impact to your family and financially, is there anything wrong with that? Now you're way ahead. I mean, it sounds like you're way ahead, and they could offer you anyway. So what? And I'm saying that, not you. So I don't want you to get in trouble for that. But that's what it sounds like. And we run into that in volleyball too, right? Like, and I know in volleyball, for example, they made a great change where the women's national, so the men and women always train separately, and the men, I believe, were always either in BC or Sherbrooke. I can't remember. But the women were in Winnipeg, and I'm like, man, anyone ever been to Winnipeg ever? Like who would ever want to go there, right? And listen, I'm not saying that that's a big impact, but in the same breath, you want to be somewhere where maybe people are around it. And I know the U.S. national team, they were in Colorado Springs. Now they're in Anaheim. That wasn't a big deal. People were happy with that. So I mean, I think it's tough. And then I mean, let's face it, there's money, right? It's money. And so let me ask this question then: when you have to go to Montreal or wherever it is to do a Boxing Canada training camp event, without getting into specifics, let me ask the question, is it on your dime, or is it Boxing Canada paying for that?
It's mine, 100%.
Yeah, and that's tough, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's one of the things. So I was the athlete's rep. I actually just recently stepped down from the position, just coming into an Olympic year. But, and that was one of the things. We would go over the contract, and they would say different things. There's mandatory training camps for 2 weeks. And it's like, my question to them was always, they wanted to have like a month or something. And I'm like, listen, like, you're trying to get these athletes. There's a lot of athletes in Ontario right now. You're going to get them to go to Montreal. They have to stay in a hotel, so they're not in their own bed. They're eating like what? Even if they try to get like these pre-made food, they're going to be eating out of a microwave. And then, they're not getting the rest they need. Then you're going to send them to a competition. You expect them to perform. Like, it's silly, right? And then they're also struggling because a lot of these athletes right now, like on our team, they're young, and they don't have the funding. They don't have the support. They don't really have kind of the support they need to get there. And to
bank of mom and dad really is what it is.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's so tough, right? So I was able to kind of help them and negotiate down to 2 weeks is kind of like what they've worked it out to. So it's a little less, but it's still a lot. Like when I was in Montreal a few weeks ago, I had to take my mom and Kate because I'm not going to be away from my daughter for that long. So we ended up
babysitting and find someone to watch the poor kid, right? Yeah, exactly.
So we got an Airbnb, and we made it work. And I was really fortunate, to have my mom and to have that support, but not everyone's going to be able to do that. Right. So yeah, it's definitely tough, and it's hard when they say it's mandatory, but then they're not paying for it.
And now other countries that do the same centralized type training, do the countries pay for that? Well,
there's usually like dorms, right? That they just stay right there on site.
Okay. So they're fed, and here's your dorm, and off you go.
Yeah, everything's kind of taken care of.
That's different. Yeah, that's different. And I can't imagine our country would invest in something like that.
No, yeah.
Like we were talking about the Colorado Springs facility. I know you haven't been there yet, but I've been there a few times actually. And like I said to you earlier, you kind of walk in there and listen, I'm not slamming Canadian athletics because it's, again, I think I've said this already. I love walking into a hospital, walking out without a bill. I'm not slamming it, but you walk into Colorado Springs and you're like, this makes a lot of sense as to why they are where they are, right? Yeah. So a different world, just totally different world. So let me ask the question then around funding. Where do you think in Canada, where should funding come from? And we have a completely different socioeconomic country than our friends in the U.S. who are, they've put money into it, they've invested in sport, and that's where they're at. We haven't so much, but we have some other awesome things in our country. And again, not Canada bashing, it's just we're different. Other smaller countries, remember Australia back in, when did they have Sydney? 2004, whatever it was. They put a whole whack of money into amateur sport. Where do you think in Canada specifically the funding should come from for amateur athletics?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I do think it should be a government thing. As much as right now we have, carding, which comes from Sport Canada. So I was carded for, I don't know, 5 or 6, maybe 7 years. I don't even know now.
And for our audience, what is carding?
So carding is where the government gives you a certain amount of money per month for training allowance. So basically you have this. And there's also other really cool pieces to it, like helping with education. Sometimes there's some things that they can help with services as far as like massage and that type of thing. So it's kind of the support that athletes get. So when you're carded, it's kind of like, okay, like I can try to live off this, although it's very, very little amount of money.
You're probably not buying big homes in Toronto sort of thing. Okay.
No. And actually, like, it was about $1,500 a month is what it was. And
so that's expenses, really. That's not really living expenses. Okay.
Yeah. So, depending on the sport and what your travel expenses are and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So you definitely need to do things over and above that. But I think it was 10 years that the carding system, they hadn't even it hadn't moved at all. Like with inflation rates and everything that's going on, like not a penny, it didn't go up. So I think it was 2 years ago or something. And the first year that I actually stopped getting carding was the first year that they actually finally increased it slightly. And I think now it might be $1,700 or something, but it was just crazy for so many years. It just had not changed. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways. I mean, we do have in Canada the program that started in 2010 called Own the Podium.
Yep.
So that program kind of, it's different depending on each sport, but it targets, I guess, the program within the sport organization. They used to actually target specific athletes. So, in our sport, I was a Own the Podium athlete. So they would basically say, you're, in the top, I think they look at the top 5 in the world. And then they say, okay, you have potential to reach the podium. So they try to give you whatever support you need to get to that top. But I think as athletes, really, I would be more than happy if at least just all of my expenses were covered. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't need to walk away with this, with money in my pocket.
You're not trying to make money off of this.
I just want
from the government.
Yeah.
Right?
I just want to make sure that when I'm going on a tournament or I'm doing whatever, that that is covered. And it used to be when I first started, I never paid for a tournament. I never paid for a training camp or anything like that. And it's just gone completely the opposite way, because it slowly was okay, well, now you have to pay $500 for a tournament and $250 for a training camp, which wasn't a big deal, but it's still, everyone was kind of what, we have to pay that? And now we're paying, I just paid $2,500 to go to represent Canada in Hungary. Which is just it's silly, right? It's so, yeah. And now I come home with a medal, and am I appreciated? Do I even get any sort of email or anything from my sport organization? It's, yeah, you know what I mean?
I do. 100%. 100%.
It's frustrating, because then they're excited. They want you to win medals, but there's no, you're not really seeing or feeling that, right? It's got to be 100% self-motivated.
Is funding different between, so let's talk about boxing specifically. Is funding different between male and female?
No.
It's all the same. Yeah. Is funding different? So let's put boxing on the same level as, let's say, I'm going to get bobsled, or let's think of another summer sport. What are some? Pardon me?
Let's say judo.
Perfect. Love it. Okay, so is it all the same, different between?
No, yeah, so it's very different. So I think it all depends on how much potential you have to get Olympic medals, right? All they care about is.
But who
getting
judges
to the top.
that?
That comes from Own the Podium, and the funding partners will make those decisions.
Okay.
Because I know, we just had a meeting when we were in Montreal, and they were talking about this, and Boxing Canada is still receiving funding, even though we haven't produced a lot of medals or anything like that, the Olympics. But they're kind of going through a transition period where they're investing in the centralized system, hoping that it's going to turn into something. But I would say if we don't do well in this Olympics, we might have a shot of receiving funding for one more cycle, but if nothing's happening at that point, I don't think we're going to receive any funding.
No pressure, but pretty much your results are going to
right? But it's like, and there's some sports that are receiving millions of dollars from these organizations. So it is dependent on your performance, but it's tough because you need the funding to get the performance, but you need the performance to get the funding. So it's kind of a catch-22 in your...
So you're almost like a pioneer with this, really, because so I know, again, with volleyball, 'cause that's what I compare it to. I know on the beach side, it was kind of a fun sport until Heaston Child won bronze in '96, and so in Atlanta. So once that happened, I mean, Ashbridges Bay went from a bunch of beer pickup games to 300 court, whatever it is, 200 courts down there now.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's one of those things where you're really gonna, no pressure, you're really gonna be a pioneer with this to get things going for boxing, really.
Yeah,
right?
we have, and we kind of have to right now. We're at the point where, I mean, there's a lot more going on than we really have time to even touch on, but within our sport organization at an international level, like, there was a chance that we actually weren't even going to be an Olympic sport this time around, because of judging and corruption and different things. So unfortunately the state of boxing is not in a great spot. So I mean, we definitely need leaders and male and female to be out there and really just putting a positive image and a positive push on the sport, for sure.
And there you have it. Mandy Bujold, Canadian Olympic boxer. Hey, make sure you listen in for episode 2. We're going to be talking about youth taking up boxing, concussions, hot button topic in every sport, female leaders in her sport. What about life after boxing? Coaching, planning, advice she gives for future Olympians, and controlling the controllables. Just a really cool, deep sport talk in episode 2. Don't forget to like me both on Facebook and Twitter. RBC Stephen Green are the handles for both. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Green Effect Podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play so you catch the next episode. And don't forget to leave a review. Much appreciated.